Kansas Community College for hosting us today, and we want to thank everyone who's come to talk about their needs and priorities. We have one agenda item that we need to handle before we get into public testimony, and that is continuation of funding for COVID testing. It's an important part of how we, as a state, are going to continue COVID-19 public health crisis. It's vital that we have reliable and accessible testing throughout the state. I have Myron Gonzalez here to give us an overview of the situation proposal that's before the committee too. So, Mr. Gonzalez.
Went right at the end of our proposed testing season. Kind of thinking we were ending up here at the end of the summer. Of course, August and September hit, dramatically impacted the testing through our contract labs and partners, and so we basically depleted most of the money. Going into the winter season, there's a request to extend some of that testing. We've already off-ramped some of that testing into other federal programs that still have funds. Our school testing is being specific school testing funding project. Some of our long-term care, there's a partner that can handle that additional cost.
Why don't you go ahead and get closely into the mic?
Yes, sir. Just to kind of recap, we've been able to find other homes for much of the testing that we started last year through our unified testing strategy. Some of that's going to federal partners such as Battelle that gives rapid, timely turnaround testing to our long-term care facilities and our congregate living facilities. Our school testing has a place for that to go, but the two areas that still need support, asked to continue support through the winter months, especially when there's an increase in other type of respiratory diseases, would be for our community testing partners and some of our employer testing that's been done through three of our contract laboratories. The employer testing is not the same as what OSHA is. It's the proposed OSHA rule that goes into effect in January. It is simply we've allowed for 10% of the testing workforce to be able to keep businesses open. 10% every couple of weeks they get tested. That's has really helped a lot over the last year. That's our program. Excuse me. To continue that, the ask is for $42 million, which will cover $17 million into the community testing program, which is over 80 days providing community testing. People find testing locally, plus our mass testing sites. Then another $25 million to cover the employer testing. Stand for questions on those things. Yes, sir, that's correct.
That number.
We anticipate just continuing with those who've already been registered, because obviously with the conversation going around the OSHA requirement, a lot of other businesses are considering doing stuff that they didn't, but we cannot. There's no funding. Not enough funding to cover that OSHA mandate. There's funding that came, so we would not increase that number.
I understand this. The state is suing this $42 million that you're requesting discretionary fund.
That is correct. The FEMA has changed their rules recently that allows the state to actually request reimbursement. And so we have taken the steps to do that. Of course, it's a fairly long process, steps you have to get through. So that we have made an attempt to do that, but that will not be placed before the current funding that we have will. So we just have to wait and see.
So what you need the Spark Committee to do is this money until we have authorization.
What we would do is we would ask this committee to allocate that money for us for the next 4 months. And at some point, if somebody decides that it needs to be reimbursed, we can reimburse. That's not a decision we can really, we're not in charge of that part of it.
But we're in the process of requesting to be reimbursed.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
President Masterson.
Assuming you're in this model you showed us, so it's 15 million.
It will probably be consumed in November, maybe the first week of December. We're running a week based on our October numbers.
Here's the only thing. Portion of funding that would allow you to go past this FEMA date. Wow, that's better. I think what we'd like to do, I would prefer to do, authorize you to continue authorize the testing and sure you have enough funding to get about FEMA or which pots are available. So we're not this locking in should have been.
Sure. We do not have access to further funds right now. The other funds that we're part of, where the larger allocation of funds from the CDC and from the federal government to us, to the state, that has been used for testing, a portion of that was allocated, about 141 million, allocated to contract lab testing, which included community testing partners and our contract. That is what's running out. The other money within that covered things such as laboratory supplies for the state laboratory, ongoing testing that the state laboratory, as well as contact tracing, centralized because our health department's in the so we did a lot of that work in centrally. So that has used up the balance of it. There's really very little. There's not really any. It's not already.
Speaker Reichman.
Thank you. We also, I don't know if you mentioned that we have the leftover CARES money to be spent by December 21st, December of this year. Sure that what's going on with that. I think President referencing some of the money that went to the locals and cities, would they be willing to help pay for some of this as well? So I think we all agree this is something we need to continue to do. Just where does it come from? And lots of money are out there in problem stuff. I think it was asked for in our last meeting we had in Kansas, and we got today to look at doesn't fill those buckets. It just says we have different conflicting information. So obviously this body can approve something like that. To be final by the State Finance Council. Hopefully there's more information before that decisions made.
Speaker, Secretary Burns Wallace, can you speak to the exact question specific?
Yes, so if Spark remembers, earlier this year or summer, we initially identified about 22 million that in relationship to CRF. Chose in August to take 11 million Department of Labor third, so there is still approximately or 11 million from that. Additionally, closing out, so there may be, we're working on those numbers now. Some of the broadband projects, so there might be a little bit more.
Mr. Pickert?
Back last summer, this committee was provided with an analysis of $5 billion in state. It showed in that analysis 480. Where did that status is?
Secretary Burns Wallace or?
Not sure exactly where. Know that that includes like the ELS, the money that CDC to us. We don't get it as ARPA, so I'd have to do to find out exactly where that 480 is to. I'm sorry.
President Masterson?
Suzanne. Hearing what I heard say would probably be spend the balance thing, which would be assurance. Assurance of business.
It's important that we provide that assurance. Secretary Burns Wallace?
Second that motion, but we will do prior to.
We have motion, a second, discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Orman.
and I apologize. I think John and I have probably gotten 1 out of every 3 words that have been spoken. So it sort of feels, as John would suggest, a little bit like a cell phone conversation from the mid-90s. But a question, which is in terms of how we allocate money, if we elect to allocate money, is there a way that we allocate it that make us more or less likely to get FEMA reimbursement? My concern would be if FEMA reimbursement is jeopardized in any way by the nature of the allocation of the money, that we should obviously be orienting whatever we do around ensuring the highest probability of getting FEMA reimbursement, because I know everybody on this committee would probably prefer to spend that $42 million investing in something that will grow the state of Kansas and ultimately address some of the other Spark-related priorities.
That's a great question. Secretary Burns Wallace.
So, Mr. Orman, what I would say is that the FEMA reimbursement has already been submitted. It is in process. Such a long process. There's no guarantee that dollars will be available prior to the end. So anything that doesn't impact higher spend, this would be so that once those dollars, this committee so choose, take back the 42 into it's almost like a done this through this process at different dollars became available over the last targeted for already used dollars. We would dollars would come. It is 100% nothing that we would take that would infringe or hurt the FEMA chance. That is our.
Great. And then, in terms of sort of getting the money back, does it make sense? And again, I apologize. I'm not sure what the actual motion was that President Masterson made, but does it make sense that any motion that we make also include a clawback in the event that we get the FEMA dollars so that we don't have to then go through that same process again of trying to figure out how to get those dollars that would otherwise end up in a different bucket of state government?
Mr. President, would you want to repeat your motion, and then we should specify that in the event that FEMA authorizes reimbursement, that these dollars be reimbursed accordingly?
Certainly. So the motion was to expend the dollar. So the motion would be to use the supplement program.
Mr. Orman, were you able to hear that?
Unfortunately not. In fact, if you look at the closed captioning or the scroll that runs along the screen, if the screen scroll doesn't pick it up, that probably means John and I didn't hear it. So no, I didn't hear it. I trust the folks on this committee, and if the five of you think that that's an appropriate motion, you're not going to have any problem getting my support for the motion.
I think it's a good motion, and it's important that we not have an interruption in testing services. And so, and it's also important that we make a clear statement that this body is in support of continuing testing. So, further discussion, motion? Okay, do a roll call vote. President Masterson? Speaker Reichman? Aye. Secretary Burns Wallace?
Aye.
Mr. Orman?
I'm going to abstain just because I didn't hear the motion.
That's reasonable. Mr. Pickert? Mr. Rolfe?
Abstain. I'm
I've-
supportive of the testing, very, very supportive, but I couldn't hear the motion either.
Understand. Okay. I vote aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Sir.
Okay, we're going to move on to public testimony portion of the meeting. If I can get the list of who signed up, we'll get started here. A couple of just quick ground rules. If you have multiple members of your same organization that are here, we only have time for one representative of your organization to speak. So we're thrilled with the turnout, but we want to make sure every organization has a chance to be represented. So if you have three people from your group, decide which of the three of you come up and provide the testimony. So we are going to go by topical area. So for those who aren't familiar, we have four working groups around health and education, economic revitalization, connectivity, which is broadband, and efficiency and modernization. So We are going to start today with health and education with Dr. Greg Mosier, City Kansas Community College. President Mosier.
Morning, Lieutenant Governor and everyone on the executive team. We thank you here, and as president of KCKCC, we really kind of have a tale of two cities, or you could say counties in Wyandotte County. We have the western side of the county, which is doing very well socioeconomically, and the eastern side of the county, which has really gone into great despair over the last 30 years. The handout that you just received, sorry for those online, the handout that you just received gives an overview of the project. It's the Kansas City, Kansas Community Education, Health, and Wellness Center, and it touches on many of the topics that you are looking to focus expenditures on for this year. Support. This is a multi-partner project aimed at eliminating the socioeconomic disparities that exist between the two sides of our county and bringing health, education, and economic development downtown KCK. As a community college, it's our mission to bring education to where people need it the most. This is the college's purpose, to build another KCKCC site in Kansas City, Kansas urban. From the information that is shared, it's easy to see that KCKCC and our community must focus on lifting people up on the eastern side of the county to make the county successful as a whole. Key programs the college will have, among others, are automation engineering technology, which has an average wage of $74,000 a year, commercial construction technology with an annual average wage of $65,000 a year, biomanufacturing, Associate of Arts, Associate of Science, ESL, and GED, which is very much needed in that area. This is truly a first of a kind project for this in the entire country. It will bring long-lasting, multi-generational benefits to the people who live in and around the park. On the handout that you received, you'll see our partners listed at the bottom, and you'll be hearing from them later this morning as well. So this project is really focused on moving people from poverty to prosperity. This is a shovel-ready and shovel-worthy project. It's $70 million, and our request is to consider a $30 million support of this project. With the financial support from the Kansas Spark Funds, this project can begin construction in spring of 2022, and the long-lasting benefits of this holistic project will definitely outlive all of us in this room. In the project itself, it is an economic catalyst, creating 54 new jobs for downtown KCK, resulting in approximately $2.5 million of additional income into the downtown area. And in addition, it will serve over 30,000 people. So I thank you for your time this morning and answer any questions if that's appropriate.
Thank you, Dr. Mosier. We will have questions for everyone who spoke on health and education at the end. So thanks very much. Okay, next we have Ken Oliver. If you would, please speak as closely into the mic as you can so that we can ensure that our folks who are joining us remotely can hear.
Kenneth Oliver from Kansas Wesleyan University. Just for the record, the football team is 43-5. We are the winningest football program in the state of Kansas. Always got a PR program. I'm here on behalf of Kansas Wesleyan University, but also K-State Kansas, or Salina. We are here to support the efforts of Salina in the housing market. As you know, that Salina has been growing both at the K-State campus in Salina and Kansas Wesleyan, our enrollment. Over the last 2 years, Kansas Wesleyan has grown 20%. those students have come from Kansas. We give back to the community of Salina. Over $100 million has went back to the community of Salina. With that, Kansas Wesleyan has implemented a scholarship over the last 2 years for Kansas residents. It's called the Ed Astra Scholarship, and we give back $15,000 off our tuition, Kansas residents. Our challenge is we are getting ready to be stagnant in our on-campus enrollment growth because of housing. Housing in Salina, we need affordable housing for those students who come, requesting the support of Salina and also the two campuses for student housing in the. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Janelle Asman. Following Janelle will be Jerron Raven.
Practitioner. Currently on the Boulevard Street Medicine team. Extreme poverty. I've seen a vast increase in the need for services. And the need for our services. In quarter 2020, we had 2021. So we are a very small team. We mostly served by volunteers. We have over 200 volunteers. What we do is we provide streets directly to the people. Service provided to people who have insurance, to people who are. And one of the things we try to do is expand our psychiatric. Statistically, it's between 20 and are experiencing homeless, some kind of mental illness for 5.5 years. Need and solution, and now lost their jobs. We're seeing a mental illness is just getting worse. People are having. And we've learned to us over and over to insurance. Transportation is a little issue. We know that it streets and you to be stolen for some people to take it should be focused.
Thank you very much. Jerron Raven.
I'm Jaron Raven, President and CEO of Swope Health. I wanted to talk about spoke about it earlier. Swope Health serves about 45,000 patients a year. We have 16 locations in the city metro area. We have 2 in State Street and the other. I'm asking you to support this project because healthcare, particularly healthcare, county is difficult. It's difficult to. 80% of our patients are uninsured. We have an opportunity in this project to, again, generational wealth, generational poverty. We have an opportunity again to transportation services, healthcare services, wraparound services, different services to the Wyandotte County. We've been serving Wyandotte County for 40 years, and we're very proud of that. In fact, we're proud that most of our employees come from Wyandotte County. So I just ask you, as Dr. Mosier, the $30 million to support this project.
Thank you very much. Next is Dred Scott.
Lieutenant Governor, thank you for your time and attention today. Dred Scott, I'm the President and CEO of Clubs of Greater Kansas City. Organization across the state of Kansas, which we call this Alliance. Altogether, located in 17 cities across the state. 12 local Boys and Girls Clubs in those 17 cities, and we touch about 35,000 age youth. Uh, Boys and Girls Clubs have been stable presence in the lives of families during. In case you weren't aware, we were one of the few organizations serving person, even when schools had to make the difficult decision to shut down. Supported children and birth, fed families who other means because of the shutdown of schools and stations. And we also provided a safe, supportive environment that were essentially very proud of the time that we were to adjust to. Out of the pandemic, we are facing some pretty significant challenges as an organization. We're a nonprofit organization, work with youth primarily school programming. So that means mornings before school starts. That means in the afternoon, school's let out. Also means full day summer program of the summer. One of the challenges that we're facing is definitely staff shortages. Workforce challenges that most organizations and businesses are facing definitely hit home for us. If you were to boil down to the essence of what we do, and the fact we have definitely relationships that we're able to build with those youth. Those relationships are really keen on having the right people in front of those young that we work. So we're asking for support, wages, so that we can attract the right staff to work with those young. Also, we've seen an uptick in mental health and behavioral health support needs of youth coming directly out of the pandemic. So we've also asked for support for our staff to be trained in trauma-informed care, to implement programs to support those youth with mental health needs, and for us to implement those programs with.
Thank you very much. Next is Stacy Williamson.
Good morning, Spark Committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you. My name is Williamson. I'm Vice President for Advancement at HeartSpring. I'm here to represent HeartSpring, located at 8700 East 29th Street North in Wichita, Kansas. HeartSpring has been serving Wichita and our surrounding communities since 1934. We employ nearly 500 staff, and we serve close to 1,000 children from 17 Kansas counties a year through therapeutic and educational support services. We are seeking consideration for a combined $14 million in ARPA funding from the state, Sedgwick County, and City of Wichita. Unlike other healthcare organization and educational providers, we did not qualify for most of the federal COVID relief funding that has been released over the last 18 months. With the requested funds, we have three primary objectives: frontline healthcare employee relief, transitional housing, and workforce development. Employing 500 people makes us one of the largest nonprofits in our area. Our essential frontline healthcare workers were not eligible for the same rescue funding as other healthcare organizations. However, we have similar crises. Fatigue, burnout, childcare insecurity, and inadequate rates of pay plague our industry and organization. Within frontline healthcare employee relief, we increased our minimum wage to $15 an hour on Monday, November 1st. We are enhancing staff training and development, partnering with Wichita State University to provide all direct service personnel access to direct support professional badge program at no cost to the employee. And we want to invest in our community by building an on-site child care facility to support shift workers. Our goal is to prepare students aging out of the secondary education system for greater independence and lifelong success. By building 3 transitional home environments on our campus, we will give 12 students the opportunity to experience a more independent setting prior to moving into their respective adult community settings. According to the CDC, 17% of children ages 3 to 17 have a developmental disability. This is an increasing trend over time and represents the future of all of our workforce. Early interventions are key. We must prepare children to be skilled and engaged community members while preparing local businesses to be inclusive, diverse, and supportive employers. Our goals within workforce development is to provide consultation statewide on how to prepare children for the workforce, train community-based professionals on how to work and employ children with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and support children and families to help them achieve greater independence and autonomy for lifelong success. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I'll stand for any questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have from Vibe, Melissa Powelson and Jody Grover.
Jody Grover, Center, 29 years. Here today, supporting our data ecosystem, Vibe Interactive, which assists families, educators, and kids. This year alone, I have responded to more than 10 school suicides, witnessed the growth in student suspensions, and the increase in risk behaviors, including vaping, use of THC, and violent acts. I've sat in meetings with early childhood administrators who reported influx of violent classrooms from the students ages 3 to 5. I provided professional development for teachers, staff, students, and the adults who need help with grief, anxiety, depression, self-care, and compassion fatigue. Because COVID did not and does not have an age restriction of whom it affects. We are in a dire need for an ecosystem that provides longitudinal data for our youth and our adults, not just 1 to 3 times a year, but rather a collective data set of tools that provide daily, weekly, monthly behavioral health, predictive data, supplying early detection and a quick response for intervention. Using to build open digital behavioral ecosystem of data, algorithms and insights provide actionable evidence between education, society, mental health, and the economy. The ecosystem is not something that is just gets switched on at a time of crisis. Rather, it's always operational, managing data associated with other risk factors that have global ramifications, such as anxiety, depression, and suicide patients. What this means that our Kansans are getting an equitable opportunity from early identification and interventions from early childhood for behavioral health, creating positive outcomes for our future of our youth and our communities. Spark financial backing, we are asking $11 million for system infrastructure for behavioral health for our youth and our communities.
Thank you very much. Next is Mary Bowling.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Mary Bowling. I am the Executive Director of Breakthrough House Incorporated, a nonprofit organization providing services and support to adult men and women who struggle with mental health challenges. We have served Shawnee County since 1978, and we currently have 20 employees. Our mission is to empower those who have mental illness and to help them live independent, impactful lives, free of nursing homes and shelters. So how does Breakthrough House do this? We have 3 programs. We have a payee program in administrative offices. The Social Security Administration authorizes Breakthrough House to manage monthly finances for individuals receiving SSI and SSDI. We manage over 240 consumers. We pay rent, utilities, medical bills, phone bills, etc. We also assist with providing a place to live, transportation, counseling, and additional community resources. Our residential housing. Breakthrough has been providing housing since 1983 to include 24-hour support group living, independent living in apartments, and in duplexes. Residents receive help with quality of living, finances, social engagement, education, and substance and medical monitoring. I say monitoring, we are not. Breakthrough Living provides project-based HUD housing and Section 8 housing. We currently have 8 locations, 15 adults and 24 adults we are servicing. Full and desperately in need of. Breakthrough House Clubhouse, a daytime facility offering 2 hot meals a day, a workout center, library, computers, job training and placement, educational programs, and a resource center and a thrift store. Membership is required. We provide help with housing and transportation. We give approximately 5,600 rides a year. We provide meals for 5,400 meals, 300 members annually. We currently have 4 vehicles. We are in desperate need of a handicap van because we do take them to and from their appointments, their doctors, the payee program, etc. Our need for funding is immediate, and we have outlined this in our written testimony. Copies if you need them today. Demand to help those with mental health challenges is raw and very. They trust Breakthrough House to help them. We receive numerous calls, walk-ins from people on the street begging us, truly begging us for help. Breakthrough House is boots on the ground. We see their concerns, we touch their hands, we hug them. We truly try to help as much as we can. It's a difficult task, as you all know. Please provide us with the funding. Our ask is just under 1.5 million. City, state, and federal do work closely with Commissioner Brown at KDADS, closely with Vallejo and Bill Persinger, the mill levy and mental health block. But we do additional 1 point. For your time today and answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Adam Timmerman.
Right next to your face. Thank you all. Good afternoon or morning, I guess. I appreciate the time to be here. My name is Adam Timmerman. I'm with the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the KC Chamber, its board of directors, 2,000 businesses that make up our membership, and the 300,000 employees that we represent, we urge the Spark Executive Committee to look favorable on strategies and priorities that best ensure a robust and inclusive recovery for the state of Kansas, specifically to address and rebuild these communities devastated by the pandemic, and as well as build for long-term economic growth. The Chamber asked the committee to look into investing in 3 specific areas. These 3 are business development opportunities and underserved communities, broadband access, and workforce solutions to existing workforce. To both recover and rebuild, the KC Chamber believes that it's critical that we use funds from ARPA to improve broadband access, with remote work and schooling taking shape and really grasping our society over the past 2 years, and becoming ever more so prevalent in our day-to-day lives. It is incredibly important that the state has a quality broadband system for its residents, its parents, and its students. Sorry, my phone froze up, and I apologize. But yeah, as more people work from home and as more education opportunities become available through broadband, it is essential that broadband is both accessible and affordable to the people across the state of Kansas. Second, item we want to talk about is the gap between businesses that need assistance and the lenders that can provide that assistance. As we saw during the pandemic, Paycheck Protection Program was a lifeline for hundreds, even thousands of businesses across the state. But it also showed there was a large disconnect between businesses and underserved communities. With the influx of ARPA money, including the SSBCI funding, we believe that funding should go to community development financial institutions to increase capital access to those businesses. And finally, with 91,000 jobs currently unfilled in the Greater KC area, we believe that the pandemic has amplified existing workforce issues, which include the severe lack of childcare across the state, transportation access, and skilled training opportunities. Chamber is working on 2 shovel-ready projects to address those issues. The first project we are working on is called a jobs portal that maps jobs, childcare facilities, and transit lines for those looking for work app on a phone. And the second project is a skill training and education campaign built to high school students in partnership with our community colleges, so they can see that skill training is a viable workforce opportunity. Both of those projects cost a little less than $1 million each. So the KC Chamber thanks you for your time and the consideration for these recommendations. We stand ready to serve as a partner and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Next is Gail Kozad.
Hi, good. CEO for Kansas Children's Service League. We are a statewide nonprofit organization, and we serve in Kansas as the state chapter for Child Abuse America. So a growing body of research shows that economic supports for families are an effective strategy in preventing child abuse, also preventing children from being placed in foster care. Concrete supports include access to rent and utility assistance, food and clothing, as well as access to economic assistance programs like TANF. Financial supports for families are effective and also in improving. As we recover from the pandemic in Kansas, it is important to remember that some of the hardest hit families were families who were paid low wages. So sometimes people don't understand the connection between concrete supports and child abuse. What I always remind people is that when you are focused as a parent on trying to figure out where your next meal is going to come from for yourself and for your children, or where you're going to sleep the next night, it is really difficult to pay attention to your social emotional needs of your child. It's to higher stress in the family, to neglect, potentially in a really stressful situation of the child. So family resource centers have been proven to be effective in supporting families who are struggling financially. These are readily accessible in local neighborhoods, schools, and serve as a hub for support, information, and resource opportunities to support families. Currently, KCSL is working with the National Family Support Network, and we've secured the ability to be a part of the national network. This will allow Kansas to take opportunities around technical support and establish family resource centers so that families can access and information, navigate the complex systems of supports that are available to them. What we know is that family resource centers have effective and been proven to help decrease child abuse cases by 63% in the states that are utilizing them. They have also reduced out-of-home placements or foster care by 50%, and there are gains in economic self-sufficiency, health support, and family functioning for the to support through those. We are asking for a national investment of $3.75 million, average startup of $150,000, which would allow Kansas to open 25 resource centers across the state of Kansas. Heard a lot today from a lot. I was listening a lot of, I have already thought about that we've seen with those family resource centers. So a family resource center is a hub, is not a shop
place for all, but it is a place to connect families with all of those resources that are in the, so.
Thank you very much. The last health and education panelist I have is Brandon Irving. Executive committee members, we will do questions for following this bit of testimony.
Good morning, panel. Citizen, not with any organization. Ask for more foundation. It's been underfunded. It's been seeing a spike in recent years. We've seen more child-related death in adults from aggravating underlying disease and other things like that. It's been progressively low in Washington County. I said cases are on the rise. This really affects served population of children, lead exposure and environmental factors can affect pregnancy youth more. As they're smaller, they absorb. Actually seen 40 years ago, the band still seeing a rise in cases in the last 5 to 10 years. Listening in you due to the fact that we are funding or the fact that we just tear down homes and build over. We still have lead in and see spots, so we have and essentially killing. Some ARPA funds already tagged. I'm just hopeful we can expand and hopefully to really address this kind of silent killer. That's all.
Thank you very much. Questions from the executive committee, education panelists? Mr. Pickert.
Kansas Wesleyan University was talking about funding housing in Salina. I was wondering, is that primarily student housing in the form of dormitories or other kinds of housing?
Come on up to the mic, please.
We would either take residential housing for apartments or student dormitory housing, either. Some additional apartment assist us, both staff of higher students.
Mr. Orman, Mr. Rolfe, any questions for our health and education panelists?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. First, for Gail Kozat, who was speaking about family resource centers.
Go ahead.
There was reference in her testimony to a 60% reduction in child abuse and a 50% reduction in out-of-home placements from states that had implemented family resource centers. Just a request, which would be, if to the extent that you have access to the underlying studies and data there, I think it would be helpful to see those because those are clearly relatively large numbers, and given what you're talking about in terms of investment, one could probably make a pretty compelling return on capital argument there. So to the extent that you have those, it would be terrific to make sure that the committee has access to them.
Absolutely. I will work to get that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Question for Dr. Mosier.
Please.
The proposed Kansas City, Kansas Community Education and Wellness Center is a beautiful project and one I think is desperately needed. I guess my question is, what's the funding ongoing for the operation of this facility, and self-sustaining, or is this something that going to need an ongoing subsidy of some sort from city, county, or government?
Yes, thank you, sir, for that question. It is self-sufficient after it is built, so we're using the model. It's a facility built by the community, but we have all done our budgets for that, self-sustainable after the building is built. There's no mill levy increase for KCKCC. That's always a question I get. We only own 60% of the facility. The 40% is actually owned partners in a commercial condom type association. Budgets, we are all self-sustainable.
Any other questions for the health and education panelists?
I had a question for Jody Grover with Vibe, which is a relatively simple one, but there was lots of discussion in terms of the work that they were proposing to do regarding getting earlier detection and intervention. And again, I realize I might seem like I'm harping on data here, but what evidence do we have that early intervention and detection is actually helpful in preventing things like suicides, which are obviously one of the principal goals of what you described?
Sure, great question. There are a lot of surveys, assessments out there. The most recent is when the Olathe School District did their assessment for mental health, and and don't quote me on the data because I don't have it in front of me, but it was over 200 students that immediately said they needed to be seen, and then out of that there were, around 16 kids that were immediately hospitalized. So the data is there that once we're asking the right questions, that our students are getting the help they need. And so, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's helpful. I assume that there was some connection to outcomes in terms of what you were talking about, but I didn't get that in your testimony.
Correct. So when you refer to mental health as well as the social emotional, they're both on there. There is information on that. When it's asked, the interventions are being able to be given and accessed, but it's not being asked on a regular basis to where we're catching them in time. So yes, I have the data on that.
And then one other question for you, which is, in your work with school districts, you mentioned sort of working to educate school districts, et cetera, and provide training, development. What are you hearing from school districts themselves about their demand for your services and/or the data ecosystem that you just described?
Right. We have over 80 of our districts in Kansas that are just waiting for us to be finalized. We've been working with some grants to do some work in 3 school districts at this time and doing some trauma-informed practices. So it's there. They're waiting. Fortunately, they know they have to do something, but they're trying to find that right fit. And nothing's asking our kids. We ask our teachers and our parents to assess the child, but we're not asking the kid, how are they doing daily, week, monthly, to be able to make those interventions. So I could give you names of tons of superintendents. I was just at a meeting last week. It's a statistic that might be interesting since you started the conversation with KU, is that the rise in our expulsions games in football and soccer this year, it's skyrocketing. So it's not just, when we're doing the data, it's not just about it's our kids, it's about our communities and being able to wrap those services around, as many of these people in this room are talking about, is being able to find that data that gives the wraparound services so that our communities are just, the behavior is there in a good place.
And so with 80 some odd school districts, are you seeing that it's principally rural districts, urban districts, suburban districts? Where's the demand coming from?
Everywhere. With our grants, we have
communities with our grants, because that's what the grant was for. We have larger school districts like in Wichita area, city area, at our 6A range. So it ranges from your small 1As to your 6A schools.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on next to efficiency and modernization. First, Jeff Harris.
Folks have a tough job. Sheriff Jeff Herrig from Jefferson County, serve as Secretary Treasurer for the Kansas Sheriff's Association. With me this morning is Chief Lloyd Newman, Valley Center, who also is the president of the Kansas Chiefs of Police, and Sheriff Danny Smith with Crawford County. At the invitation of Governor Kelly, both organizations had met and made a priority list for stuff that the law enforcement community to serve our community, protect, and make sure that we jails was the #1 priority, so I'm going to hit on that. With our jails, I've classified our jail as fairly new, and it was built in 1996. We had no way to quarantine anybody. We also have, everybody knows, country problem in our health people jails. So I'll just give you an example of what I'm looking at doing. My jail is a 5-bed quarantine/mental health that is somewhere shy of $3 million. Don't have enough money to fund that whole project. County commissioners have earmarked $2 million. So, you know, maybe, and some of us have talked about a cost share for some of the facilities, looking at every county in the state. I think there's only 90-some jails, but police departments, sheriff's offices, looking at some modernization systems, sanitation, which that's how much those were till the sheriff's conference last month, and they're quite expensive. But if they do the job, it's well worth for those that serve the public. Sure that we sanitize to and Sheriff Smith handed you that list that we for the governor. I won't hit on all those. You look at them. Several of them. Systems is one. Updating the training center is a C-post. The state of Kansas. Said questions at a later. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff and Chief. Next, we have Darcy Meese.
Appreciate the opportunity to be Darcy Meese. I'm with what we serve 450,000 Kansans. And I'm here today to talk to you about two limited, a very unique opportunity, but at the same time limited in those things that the money is spent upon. Two things that I would like to discuss today. into the water infrastructure provision. In terms of the premium, Water One could not have a break in service during the pandemic. Critical to. So we had hundreds of employees that had to report to work every single day to treat the water, to assist customers, to fix water main breaks. So those individuals for the to our customers. So we did expense at about 1 point. In terms of the water infrastructure piece of the ARPA, I've identified a couple. First is 2 transmission mains in Johnson County that are needing replacement just simply due to the infrastructure itself. Certainly, these are not projects, but they're very straightforward. So the replacement of these 2 transmission mains would be a one-time. Certainly would increase the economic vitality of Johnson County and sustaining in future. Another innovative project, sometime hydroelectric. Have a weir dam from the 45 bridge across the Kansas, the water over to our water intake, to the fact that this resource passing by us could be using to generate power. Looked into and done a feasibility study for vetted the project, stakeholders on the river. Legislature has an easement. It's about an $8 million project, and it would allow us to run a sedimentation facility that's just across the road, which completely off most of the times. It would not only take us off at times, but it would also give us that emergency backup to water supply. So with that, I would be questions if you.
Thank you very much. Those are the only 2 efficiency and modernization panelists, unless I've missed someone. Speak now. Okay, questions for efficiency and modernization panelists from the executive committee? Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. My question is for the law enforcement or sheriff. Obviously, this goes to almost everyone. Question. There's a lot of federal money that came in, not just that we're reviewing, but also that came school districts that came to the cities and counties. How do you approach them? They're willing to chip in part of this investment.
That was part of the, so I'm not just going to speak for myself. So our project is $3 million to add 5 cells onto the kitchen. The county has taken that on, tagged $2 million of that for the sheriff's office and the jail. But that includes not only the addition, but also using all the plumbing within the facility.
Thank you for that. That's encouraging to hear. With all these projects, there's only so much time in the day that we can vet them, balance them out with other needs in the communities. And so if you have the support of your school district, your county and city and their federal funds to supplement this, it kind of gives it a little extra vetting process, a little more urgency for the area. So that's not just for you, Sheriff, but also for everybody as they're bringing these.
Other questions on efficiency and modernization? Mr. Orman, Mr. Rolfe? Okay, we're coming to connectivity. I believe we have just one activity who hasn't already spoken. That's Susan Nuss.
Listening to me. Susan Nuss, owner of Black Dragon Networks in Jetmore, Kansas. I'm also part of a 5-generation farming family out there. Lived there my whole life. County benefited from a $186,000 investment in Spark funding in 2019 to establish an affordable fixed wireless LTE system, which provides 100 megabits download, 20 megabits upload, internet service to over 1,260 square miles and 1,600 homes in Hodgman County. National and regional fiber providers like Windstream, AT&T, Comcast, KFN, Zayo, and neighboring ILECs quoted 1 gigabits backbone service to Black Dragon lease towers as a bid for a cost of thousands of dollars per month with a construction cost of over $20,000 or more. Hodgman County is in a fiber desert as it is partially covered by 4 different companies and is not the center of any one company. Middle mile funding for broadband is crucial to build fiber backbones. Currently, the nearest fiber POP is 28 miles away, which drives the cost to rural communities up. The Kansas Spark Committee and the Kansas Department of Commerce Broadband Committee to consider a funding request for $3 million to support this quality fixed wireless system that will serve anything from a soil probe in the field to a county courthouse in the center of the county. Thank you for your time, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you very much. How long was the trip from Jeff?
It's 5 hours.
5 hours.
I did attend the one in Dodge City. I do appreciate the travel out there and your concern out there. I wasn't prepared to testify at the time, but it helped me understand the process and what you guys are going through. So thank you for your time.
Questions? Mr. Orman, Mr. Rolfe? Thank you very much. Thank you for making it. Okay, we're going to next to last topical area, which is economic revitalization. And we'll start first with Beth Montalon.
Thank you for the opportunity to present. I'm Beth Montalone from Kansas State University. I'm the Senior Associate Vice President for Research at K-State. I'm going to tell you today about our new initiative, which will leverage our expertise in fields of research across the university and our mission to create an economic prosperity plan that has a very ambitious goal of supporting the creation of 3,000 direct jobs and $3 billion in direct investment in our state in 10 years. The areas of our prosperity initiative are food and agriculture systems innovation, digital agriculture and advanced analytics, biosecurity and biodefense, and something called K-State 105, Every Town to Gown, which envisions an office equivalent to our extension offices in every Kansas to support economic development in those counties. Our requests specifically today are for 2 facilities that will help with aspects of our plan. One is that we wish to purchase a vacant industrial laboratory facility in Manhattan that we will then renovate into a multi-tenant laboratory and office facility to support companies that want to locate within the region, conduct startup capital research on different products. It could also support spin-offs from university-supported research. The other project for which we're seeking funding is to complete installation of our biologics development module in the Biosecurity Research Institute and to provide incentives for companies to begin to use this facility to develop valuable biologics such as vaccines and drugs that can be used to combat high threat and emerging pathogens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Jason Smith.
Lieutenant Governor, Committee. Jason Smith, President, CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. First, I probably need to mention, because they might not let me back in Manhattan, if I don't mention the fact that even though our win might not have been as exciting on Saturday, it was a boring win number 7. So we are bowl eligible and hopefully headed somewhere fun over the holidays. First of all, there's so many needs right now in our state, and I appreciate your work in trying to identify those. We've heard a lot of them already that in Manhattan are important to us: housing, daycare, some of the other initiatives that we are addressing locally, as well as you all are addressing them on the state level. We also are very supportive of economic development initiatives, and I know Kansas Department of Commerce, under the leadership of the Lieutenant Governor, will be working on some strategies. We support those as well, because we need to attract new companies to Kansas. But while we're excited for and support efforts to attract new companies to Kansas, Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce supports entrepreneurship as the key investment for long-term economic vitality. As is our community's history of collaboration between Kansas State University, the City of Manhattan, and the regional business communities, we have come together to address these key investments together. So the first thing we did is 2 years ago created a new nonprofit that's publicly, privately funded called Spark MHK. Yes, the name is a little unfortunate. We had it first, but you all are certainly more popular. We don't get 100 people to our Spark MHK meetings, but they are working diligently to enhance the ecosystem, the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Manhattan, including support of training of entrepreneurs of all types. The next phase for us will be approaching the city for the creation of startup capital funds, which would include a set-aside for disadvantaged businesses. This is something that we feel is incredibly important to support those businesses that are starting and growing. We are very proud of our effort using some CARES dollars that we're able to get nearly $4 million into the hands of small businesses, both Raleigh and Pottawatomie County. So something that we've done already historically, locally, that we're excited about. The last one that we would ask for some assistance on is a new business accelerator. This is a project that we think is important for us to be able to grow our entrepreneurship community, which will create more Kansas tax-paying businesses, and I think not only something that the Act supports, but also something that would create long-term value to the state of Kansas. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Kimberly Weaver.
It's a lifelong. Very honored to be here with all these. You all know that Wyandotte County doesn't have a single homeless shelter. That I talk to, people don't know that. It's true. When people lose their housing in Wyandotte County, on the street, and a lot of people are losing their housing. Rent and utility assistance that was available through the CARES Act dried up in just a few weeks, and the CARE program is problematic. Everybody that I know who's applied has gotten their application processed. Since the eviction moratorium ended, almost 100 people have been getting evicted. Right now, there are over 700 people on the wait list for public housing. I wish I could tell you that things are starting to look up, but they're not. Cost of rent is increasing for thousands of people, sometimes by as much as $300 to $400 per month. Property taxes are going up for homeowners at the same time as people are. Someone can't pay their rent or their property taxes, they end up on the street since we don't have a home shelter. Since we don't have affordable housing, they stay on the street. Our focus has to be on ensuring that people don't lose their homes in the first place. Rent, utility, and property tax assistance need to be widely available. And then we need to fund solutions for when people do lose their housing. These are needed to open up long-term and transitional shelters. Lastly, this money needs to be used to build the infrastructure to house people permanently. Tens of millions need to be allocated for building new, truly affordable units and rehabbing vacant homes here. Housing is the #1 crisis in Wyandotte County, and it must be the #1 priority for use of the ARPA funding.
Thank you very much. Next is David Franklin.
And good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to present to the committee. I'm David Franklin, I'm principal with Enterprise KC. Enterprise KC is Cliffield's vision for economic development, activity that's results-oriented, data-led, focus on enterprise development, job growth on a cluster-by-cluster basis. We're seeking funds to help support a comprehensive roadmap that establishes Kansas as a globally recognized cybersecurity center of excellence, and in the process create thousands of high-paying jobs and high-value jobs across the entire state. The risk Kansas faces from cyber attacks continues to intensify. Cybersecurity threats touch every industry, every academic institution, every entity, every Kansan. As cybercrime escalates, an unprecedented shortage of cybersecurity workers. We're simply not producing enough workforce-ready graduates to meet demand. Statewide, cybersecurity employment is up over 25%. However, over 2,500 filled cybersecurity jobs remain. Represents approximately $266 million in salaries and almost $15 million in state payroll taxes that we're missing out on because of the shortage of. In 2020, cybersecurity was a $150 billion market. In the pandemic, there were shortages of attacks. Represents about $366 billion by 2028. Working with the state's vast pool of industry, academic assets, we believe we can develop a collaborative infrastructure that serves as a cornerstone on which to rebuild the state's economy, benefit all Kansans. Our plan includes 6 objectives that we develop in industry, academia, and government. Center on workforce development, improving the talent supply chain, increasing federally funded research to the state, establishing a secure research hub and cyber range, programs to increase cyber startups, and creating right infrastructure to ensure that graduates remain here, enterprises grow here, the state becomes a magnet for enterprises and talent to relocate. Fully funded, this plan can dramatically increase and accelerate the state. We believe 30 new cyber enterprises will be formed, 77,000 jobs overall, an annual uplift of $3.2 billion in years. It's also going to improve the state's security posture. This is a shovel-ready, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to invest in a sustainable.
Next, we have Felton.
Kimberly, you were awesome. Good morning, Lieutenant Governor, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me this time. My name is Lieutenant Karen Felton at the Kansas City, Kansas Salvation Army right down the road. Since March of 2020, the services available for people who find themselves without a home or a place to go were dramatically reduced. The number of places that would take new clients for long-term transitional housing were cut by more than half, which left a huge gap in services. The Salvation Army KCK has 3 programs that are long-term transitional housing. One is for homeless veterans, the other is for hospital deferment for the homeless, and our New Life program, which is for people exiting prison. Our New Life program is the one I want to talk about today. It offers clients a chance to live in a structured environment once they are released from prison. As we know, many people become institutionalized and have a hard time re-entering society, which leads to a high rate of recidivism. People who enter our program have time to gently re-enter society. It's hard to leave one culture and be expected to adapt quickly to a new one. Our program offers structured, holistic wraparound care with a focus of removing barriers to employment and housing. The funding for this program ran out amid the pandemic, but my husband and I decided that because of the successes we were seeing, we would continue to run it without funding, trusting that we would find a way. Recently, we had a visit from the Secretary of Corrections along with 2 of his staff. His staff called me just a few hours after his visit and reported that he was so impressed with his visit and with our program that they spent an hour in the parking lot talking about ways they could possibly find us funding for the men and women who find themselves with nowhere to go once they're released. He charged his staff to work hard to find us the funding opportunities that we need so they could send more people our way. We have seen lives change and people achieving success in securing employment, education. Even here, we have a client ready to graduate from this college, and we need help to keep our doors open because we believe every single person deserves a second chance. I feel like a mouse among giants here because our ask is much simpler. It's $18,067 to hold one of our residents for a year, which is much less than keeping them incarcerated. We reserve 16 of our beds for this population, so our total year to run the program at full capacity is $289,000 to break even. We are asking for 1 year of funding while we can search for other revenue paths to keep these people from being put out on the streets after they leave. Thank you.
Very much. Next, we have Monica Probst Darris.
My attire, I've got a very long. My name is Monica Probst Medeiros, and I am the Economic Development Coordinator for a local nonprofit called Groundwork Northeast Revitalization. We are a local nonprofit that supports the northeast area of Wyandotte County, which is a historically underserved area of our county that requires much attention. But what I'm bringing here today is to propose that ARPA funds be utilized to support a very robust and targeted effort to support low-income communities in Wyandotte County through continued rent, mortgage, tax, and utility assistance. I'd like to highlight specifically, however, that while programs like this do currently exist to address some of these concerns, that there's been gaps in allocation and implementation support that's heightened housing insecurity for hundreds of Wyandotte County residents through the pandemic. Actually, it's probably more like thousands. I would also like to add that property tax delinquency represents a unique concern to our residents and to our long-term neighborhood stability and has yet to be addressed by existing federally funded initiatives locally. Over the past 2 months, myself and other dedicated community members and organization partners have reached over 250 doorsteps in Wyandotte County where residents were at risk of being foreclosed on or evicted from their properties just in October's tax sale alone. Efforts were successfully made with commissioners to postpone the tax sales for October and January of next year. However, this simply provides more time for residents' fees and interest to continue to accrue on top of their outstanding balances. And without funds to support emergency financial assistance for our residents, by April of next year, over 1,000 seniors, adults, and children could be displaced from their homes and from our county permanently through the tax foreclosure process. This process also captures renters who have absolutely no control over whether their absentee landlords are paying taxes on the behalf of their property and who are ultimately defenseless throughout this process. This issue will be compounded and potentially expedited by the recent end to rent and utility moratoriums and will continue to exacerbate the growing number of unhoused and unsheltered residents in our county. I'd like to second what others in this room, such as Ms. KK, I've never met you before, but I really thoughts that you shared, Miss Weaver, and you, Scott, who I've also not had the pleasure to meet. And what others in this room have said about other community support efforts focus on providing direct health, housing, and support services to our community members. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Rick Nesbitt.
Both here and via Zoom. Thank you for allowing me to come speak to you today. I signed up for the portion of the structure issue. Realtor by trade, but I serve on the board of directors for the Sherwood Improvement in Shawnee County, city of Topeka. Basically a city within a city. We have over 5,500 residences district, charged with taking care of structure issues. We have over 27 miles of roads. And one of the big issues that we have also is the tributaries and the sediment basins and things that flow with Sherwood, which then eventually flows into the Shunganunga Creek, into the Kansas River. Have 13 projects currently that are in need of some ARPA funding. Those include 7 sediment basins, some drainage walls, some drainage ditches, and stormwater erosion control issues. I submitted this information on submitted to you as part of we operate with a budget just under 5 projects that we're asking total about 700. So this equates to almost 2 times a single year. As I mentioned, I'm currently getting ready to serve my 6th 2-year term. While we're elected, we are basically citizens that take care of ask respectfully that you consider these projects. Some of these projects are nearing catastrophic phases, and if so, they could water that flows.
Thank you very much. Next, Kristen Davis.
Lieutenant Governor, members of the Spark Executive Committee, thank you so much for your time today. My name is Kristen Wood. I'm here representing Goodwill of Western Missouri and Eastern Kansas, but also the Goodwill Association of Kansas. I'm extending and elaborating on testimony that was provided in Dodge City about a week and a half ago by Goodwill Industries of Kansas. Collectively, we have been providing workforce development services to Kansans and employers in Kansas for over 100 years. And as we continue our economic recovery from the pandemic, there continue to be counties with unemployment over 4%, thousands of employers desperately in need of skilled talent in order to meet their business needs. And so the Goodwill Association of Kansas stands before you with 2 high-impact statewide workforce development proposals. The first is focused on digital inclusion and remote employment services. We propose providing services to folks who are unemployed, underemployed, and incumbent workers in need of upskilling in high-need areas, especially rural areas across the state. We have 2 mobile workforce units, RVs that have laptops and Wi-Fi that we can travel anywhere to provide services. And we propose to do that providing hiring events in collaboration with employers, digital skills training services, as well as other employment services, connection to broadband and devices in high areas, as well as credential training and placement services. we look forward to enrolling other individuals into long-term or intensive employment services as well as needed. And we look forward to collaborating with local governments, the Spark Committee, as well as the Departments of Commerce to identify where we need to go. But right now, we have 16 counties in Southeast, Central, and the Wyandotte area that we think services. For a 3-year program, we anticipate being able to serve 1,200 individuals who would all gain digital skills. 200 of those would enroll into intensive employment services, and we would see at least 150 job placement or advancements. And for that 3-year program, we would be requesting $1.725 million. Additionally, we have reentry services. We would look forward to expanding upon a successful program that is already located in Wichita, where folks can get a credential through a college while getting their high-need success coach, their wraparound services, and life skills. We would look to funding to expand to 4 new areas across the state, including Wyandotte, Johnson counties, Topeka, Hutchinson, and Arkansas City. With an investment of $1.825 million for reentry services, we would be able to serve 400 individuals with legal history and would be able to achieve a 75% graduation rate and a 75% job placement rate or continuing in education. Thank you for this opportunity to testify, and I look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you very much. Next is Erica Zimmerman.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all. I am Erica Zimmerman. I'm the Executive Director for Lawrence Habitat for Humanity. But today I'd like to speak with you from my other position, which is Chair of the Kansas Habitat Homes Advisory Council. I'm also joined by 2 colleagues from Habitat for Humanity of Kansas. Heard from some of my colleagues in Wichita a couple weeks ago. The Kansas Habitat Homes Advisory Council is made up of 16 Habitat affiliates across the state. The group represents rural, urban, and suburban communities of Kansas. Some of those areas include Wichita, Manhattan, Topeka, Kansas City, Arkansas City, and Emporia. We are requesting $1.5 million to help address the rising cost of building materials. With these funds, we would leverage more than an additional $3.5 million for a total impact of $5.5 million. If granted these funds, Habitat affiliates across the state would build a total of 50 affordable homes. These homes will create stability for citizens. Their impact will last for generations. This year, the Habitat affiliates across our state have been severely challenged by the rising cost of building materials. On May 1st, 2020, lumber futures traded around $256 per 1,000 board feet. On October 1st, 2021, it was $776, a 67% increase. And it doesn't just stop at lumber. According to the National Association of Home Builders, the cost to build a home has increased by $36,000 just this year. This significant price increase greatly impacts Habitat's ability to build housing at a time when safe, affordable shelter is crucial to families. Persistent shortage of affordable means that 1 in 10 Kansans spend more or half of their income on housing, income to afford healthcare, food, and the need for affordable housing in our state continues to increase, and many Kansans struggle to pay for housing even. Thank you for your time and ask for your support and consider this request for $1.5 million in order to provide funding to ensure that more people have an affordable.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Todd Halstead or Bobby Bagby.
Bobby Bagby. My family owns movie theaters across the state. Thank you for your leadership throughout this last year. It's 2 years of craziness that we've all gone through. My grandfather started this business in 1924, and I can't tell you the weight of that throughout this time. We almost have gone bankrupt many, many times over the last 18 months. However, we're still standing. The future does look bright. PricewaterhouseCoopers says that they expect our industry to recover until 2024. That is because of it's being delayed being made, continuing to hold certain movies, tell everything across the whole nation, client on the Hollywood studios to give us product. Where I would say that we are a grocery store that only has old cans of soup to sell when they're not giving us fresh produce. We're asking for a grant program by the American Rescue Act through the federal government to be given to movie theaters across the state. Our cultural hubs in many of our smaller communities. We operates in smaller communities across Kansas. And in many instances, it is the only form of out-of-home entertainment. It's an opportunity to see the rest of the world. We've been disproportionately hurt. As of right now, we're still operating at about 70% of our team. 20 and most of this year, we were much lower than that, down about 90%. So it has been incredibly devastating, and I've gotten some help, which has been great. It helped cover some of the dramatic losses from 2020. We still have a long head in order to. These are expensive to build and expensive to maintain, and the likelihood of these smaller communities losing their movie theaters, one is very, very small. Happy to answer any questions. I love being able to add a little magic of the movies to our community. Please help us continue to do that. The future looks bright. We just need help to get to 2024.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Hannah Stambaugh.
Good morning. My name is I serve as the administrator. I'm here today with several and community partners to verbalize things that we have identified. The American Rescue Plan Act is to be able to address local, state needs generated by the COVID-19 pandemic with the goal of creating a stronger future. Through business and nonprofit, as well as individual household surveys, we were better able to understand the impacts of COVID-19 on the local economy to help our governing body develop a framework to focus our investments. Top-ranked investments that our citizens deemed as a very high priority for us to focus on: housing, childcare, and workforce development. While there were other things that were identified throughout the analysis of the data, these three helped our local validate what we have been seeing in our community. The other local government and community partners that have joined me here today will speak further on these priorities. But our collaboration and communication has been a vital piece to work together for us to leverage our ARPA. However, in order for us to achieve successful revitalization in our community, we do need further collaboration with the state. While Treasury's interim final rule broad, leveraging those ARPA funds to address economic impacts will chart a great future for our community that will ultimately have an impact on the economy. We look forward to opportunities to collaborate further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Mitch Robinson.
Not take advantage of too much time from requirement. I'm Mitch Robinson. I'm Executive Director of Solana Community service, Salina, Saline County. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate the time. Speak to as was mentioned, this problem for quite a long time. Good problem to have. August of 20, Governor, Lieutenant Governor came down to Salina. There's two projects. First one was the expansion of Pizza, Swan's Foods, $600 million investment. The company product, two new production lines. You can imagine pizza being made semi-low per hour with this new equipment. So it's going to change how they produce pizza. This is the world's largest pizza facility in this expansion. 225 new jobs on top of the existing 1,100 jobs the company has, $65,000 annual salary. And the second announcement was made that week. Great Plains, which is owned by Kubota, they are bringing a construction line from Japan to Salina. In the first 3 years, that'll be so it's an additional 200. Quite excited about this opportunity. Got a third one. Repair operate. Salina. Currently have about COVID, but it's back from that. So between these three announcements, as well as the additional existing, there's over 1,600 jobs that need to be in the Salina area. That's caused a major housing. So much like you've heard, I'm sure, in the other on. This continues to be critical for expansion of these companies and future growth. It's almost more important concern after we pull these initial jobs. Because if we don't get housing, growth will not be. So we're very good. It's mentioned by several other. So role as a child care issue, and we're very much looking at that. So I'm going to yield at this point to, and they'll get into what's going on in Salina.
Thank you very much. And we have 3 more people from Salina. We could have one of you summarize the so that could be Driscoll, Jacob Wood, or Eric Brown. Congratulations.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for having us. Lauren Driscoll, Director of Community and Development Services for the City of Salina. Also joined by Eric Brown with our Chamber of Commerce and Jake, our manager. As you can tell, we are very happy to talk to you today. Our need for housing in Salina and Saline County is critical and is directly related to the economic revitalization of our community. Since 2015, we've owned 350 housing. Of those, 100 not single family. Of that, only 64 were. As Mitch mentioned, our largest employers have announced that they're adding more than 1,000 jobs. The state as a whole, that growth, the last 24 months is 10% of the new. Just the biggest question I have. That's what doing here today and what we are doing on the basis. Our 2021 housing plan update we did this spring shows that we need a diverse range of housing product at all price points. Estimated we need 1,000 new units by 2020, another 500 by 20. So in a market that is the first labor and supply market in modern history, amongst nationwide housing shortage, Salina is trying to tackle this challenge. Competing with metro areas where labor and supplies are more available, rate of return on rents are higher. Economic revitalization dollars are needed in order for Salina to continue its upward trajectory, build on this economic growth. The city, the county, our school district, and our other partners mentioned are committed to doing this together. We are using the RHID process, IRBs, Revitalization Act, other tools, including using some of our ARPA funds to help make housing happen, but it is not enough. That's why we are here today. Without financial assistance, funds not address the financial gaps associated with housing projects, especially multifamily, build the pioneer infrastructure needed to create new buildable lands. Sparks funding will help to our community, most importantly to the companies that are investing in Salina, investing in Canada.
Very much. Last on conversation, Z. Hicks, did you have? Okay, questions for the economic from the executive committee? Mr. Pickard?
I had a question for David Franklin. I didn't hear the amount of the request. Sounds like a tremendous program creating growth. What is it that Spark Committee can do for Enterprise can?
So all 6 programs fully funded, approximately $79 million, of which about 30 is for secure space, SCIF. Certainly resources. So anything and everything to that we believe there's a tremendous amount of interest from private investment in this.
Nothing specific.
I think we we asked for $30 million actually over. Also tasked to give the whole
Mr. Orman, any questions for?
I just have one question, actually, for Jason Smith with the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. If is Jason still in the room?
Yes, he's making his way to the mic.
Great. So it looked like Manhattan had sort of identified entrepreneurship as being the key to growth. And I was just wondering, I seem to recall back in 2013, Manhattan did a study looking at graduates who had left K-State and then ultimately left the Manhattan area. And as I recall, a reasonably high percentage of them said that they would return to Manhattan, Kansas, if they had a comparable job opportunity to the one that they had where they were currently. Is that part of the focus of what you're trying to do with your entrepreneurship program and your capital program is create those opportunities for those recent graduates who might have left the Manhattan area to come back?
Absolutely. And so if you take a look at our current employment opportunity, private sector employment, majority of our private sector employers started as entrepreneurs or continue to be entrepreneurs. So Civic Plus, as well as some of our other larger Haynes brands now, Anco Windows. And so what we've discovered is that actually the long-term sustainable employers in our community, at least, are the ones that start out by entrepreneurs, and they tend to put in deeper roots and quite frankly have better jobs, because that's where the headquarters is as they grow. And so you see a lot more of the high wage, highly skilled employers tend to be the ones that started as entrepreneurs.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Quick question for Felton. I really appreciate Ms. Wheeler being here to talk about the needs of population area. I was curious, is you have a homeless shelter, as I understand, Felton, and
shelters. Shelters, the term, they can to 2 years.
Shelters.
There is
in
none.
Kansas City,
It's on the
Kansas.
Missouri. And her point, the money that we've gotten for housing relief, it's a very complicated process. Service people processing what they need with.
I had a question, I think, for Erica Zimmerman about the increasing costs construction of a single-family home. So I think you said the cost is up $36,000 this year. So that material prices have fluctuated pretty. Where was it at the beginning versus today?
So for example, in Lawrence alone, it cost us the same, it actually cost us more to build a 3-bedroom. We just finished in July. So it cost us more money to build a 3-bedroom than it did a 5-bedroom home just 1 year ago. So we're seeing all across anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 increases in what we're having to do to budget just to build 1 or 2 houses.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank the city and county of organized. I'm surprised that, frankly, every community in. But I do have a question, and I don't understand, housing development, talking about people who find houses, take this, or what is it that the park committee can fund housing? I mean, what is it? Why is this not demand for housing? Builders building houses. Follow for me.
It's a really good question, and it's one we've struggled with. One of the things we had our consultant do this spring, and I can tell you I've seen it tested as well over the last few months as we've been working with different developers. One of the easiest ways to boil this down is you can get $2 a square foot in Kansas City and Wichita, and you can get $1.50 in Salina. And we're completely pushing our rates to match our incomes. But if you can take the same team, same supplies, and you can get them cheaper and easier somewhere else, and you ask a developer which one to choose, and frankly, they can go anywhere right now, anywhere. They're gonna choose where they can make more money and it's easy. So it puts us at a disadvantage in trying to entice them to come to Salina, especially like, for instance, Wichita being hour 15 away, and I'm not trying to pick on them, but you could have several projects going in Wichita in different areas, where in Salina, probably going to be there for one project. And if something slows that project down, you don't just shift resources to another. It just makes it very difficult for us to be competitive. And then multifamily is really interesting. You kind of make this base case scenario. If you're building denser, you're building very similar product, it should be cheaper. But based on share that are about building supplies and labor shortages, difference really isn't there right now. So multifamily in particular is the hardest to build.
What's the Sparks role in this process?
Well, I think really what we're looking for and what we're seeing is needing cash to help fund gaps. There's, a funding gap of what they need to be able to make on that project and what they're able to make doing that project in Salina. Trying to fund that gap is where we need help. I mean, we can do some of that with property tax abatement. We can do some of that with some cash. I mean, we've set $1 million aside for infill, particularly in the city of Salina. We're using another for Greenfield, but that doesn't go very far. And then the other thing is infrastructure, particularly pioneer infrastructure. We may have certain properties are available for, building 300 or 400 units, but they need water and sewer, or they need new perimeter roads. And that's a significant investment. We either add that on top of the project, which is already not penciling out, or we get some cash to help do that. And some of the things that we're trying to do don't necessarily fit into some of the federal funding that's been specifically allocated to infrastructure because they're not necessarily in an LMI census tract.
So knowing that those gaps can be addressed, what would example? So hypothetically, structure, what best approach?
Well, I think it's a varied approach. I mean, cash is always king. Being able to apply cash to a project to make that work is huge. I think the other thing we've been hearing from developers is even being able to get like financial reassurance from the state. So if they're looking at getting loans, interest rates matter a lot, particularly in multifamily, because you're looking at 10 years. Plus, it's a little different than like what Habitat does with building a single-family residential home, is you're also managing a property over a certain amount of time, which plays a slightly different number. So getting financial securities to get lower interest rates is also another way we've seen other states be able to back multifamily projects and be powerful that way. But a lot of times it comes down to cash, and we can't even bridge that gap just dealing with property tax. I will say, just because I'm up here on the mic for everybody else, we do have some ideas on workforce development, and childcare is definitely part of it. And we've been working to try and get some of our new developers to put childcare facilities into their housing developments. So it's kind of a full spectrum when you have as many new as we do.
Mr. Speaker?
Thank you. This is a great example for us to talk about the collaboration, pots of money, kind of pick up on Mr. Pickard's questioning. You guys remember when we first met, we talked about the 1.6, talking about our panel tab that we're looking at, plus the additional money that came to the state, which our state, this is going to get in the weeds or some in the room, but the budget that was passed, that this panel would still oversee those. And so outside the 1.6 we're talking about, I think there's about $230 million that was given for housing assistance that we're not discussing. So it's a great example of how we collaborate, work together to find how to use not just this 1.6 that we're talking about, but the rest of the money that was given to the state. We have all these little programs going back and forth. I think there's over $900 million been given directly to K-12. Another $1 billion has been given to our cities and counties, in addition to the funds we're talking about. And we're all wanting the same thing. And so, especially with Salina, you guys are all unified, working together. Of the money that's been given directly to Saline County, how much of that is going to the type of projects that you're asking for us to do the same kind of thing?
So as Hannah mentioned, county went through a survey process and has kind of broken up their funding into these different buckets. Of that housing bucket, or of those different buckets, they have one related to housing, and I think it's $2 million for housing. And we have a project, I mean, none of it's been fully dedicated yet. We just approved an RHID for 108 units of single family townhomes a couple months ago. We have a project that's working towards completion. It's 168 units of multifamily, which was an IRB. And then we have another project that has a large gap that we're looking at. The county's looking at doing $1.5 million. We're looking at doing $1 million, trying to keep $1 million set aside for infill, because that's really one of the most challenging spots, is dealing with our existing housing stock. Numbers just aren't that simple, and you have to work on a much smaller scale. That have been successful in doing infill housing stock, like Lawrence, takes cash to really start that off successful. We'd also like, we have a Chodo. We'd really like to take some funding and get them started as a nonprofit doing a development so they can make some money off of that and keep doing nonprofit housing development in the community. I don't know if this is the moment, but we'll have a breakdown of our full ask of what we're hoping to do, because it's an interesting thing. I also happen to be a city planner by trade. We bring 1,000+ new people into a community. It's more than just your basic infrastructure. There are a lot of social
What we'd like is if you would submit that 15 minutes over meeting, but appreciate it very much.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pickard had asked at the last meeting for an update on where we process for the coordinator. Masterson, do you want to speak to that?
That's why I think as many questions as I have, it's important
disseminated. So and coordinators keep. So kind of this committee authorized a sub-panel of public members. I think it would be parallel path. I think it's in the form of a authorized our private sector, specifically Mr. Pickard, instead of John, I would Secretary Burns Wallace, because I think to do this I need the Secretary of Ministry. Motion would be to have those three individuals as a subcommittee of this committee get together and determine what the compensation package would look like for the coordinator, and be able then to negotiate a candidate that's a. So that would be, because I think what we need to do is get these things disseminated. It's a speaker that says, say yes to one thing, lots of great things, but until we get and that value compared, spinning our wheels a little bit. So that my motion would be to authorize three individuals I mentioned to get to compensation package.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by the speaker. Discussion on the motion. Call vote. Masterson, Bragman, Secretary Burns Wallace.
Aye.
Mr. Orman,
Aye.
Mr. Pickard. Mr. Rolfe had to leave 10 a.m. And I vote aye. Motion carries. Last quick item is that I would expect that we will need to have Spark Executive Committee virtual meeting later this week, probably on Friday. So if the members of the Executive Committee are on the lookout for schedule requests related to that, I'd appreciate it. There are any other items the Executive Committee members would like to bring forward? Okay, hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.